Grant Roberts.
Because the Rugby World Cup ends in October, and that's it. That's the end of the plan for the growing of jobs. It's a figment. And what's more, jobs and growth projections in this budget are based on nothing. And not only do we think that, actually the Inland Revenue Department thinks that, and the Ministry of Social Development thinks that. Because as my colleague Stuart Nash said in the Part 1 debate, there's a $4 billion gap between the forecast of what the people who actually collect the tax think they're going to get and the Treasury who are making these bold, heroic projections about growth. But what's more, the Ministry of Social Development are projecting that they will be paying out more and more in benefits at exactly the same time as the Treasury thinks that the number of people employed will be going up. There's a problem there. If Treasury's projections and forecasts were actually accepted by across the public service, MSD would be forecasting main benefit costs to go down. They're not. They're forecasting benefit costs to go up. So we have the Inland Revenue Department and the Ministry of Social Development saying that Treasury's forecasts don't stand up. They are a figment. They are not real jobs because there is no plan to actually create those jobs in this budget. There's nothing about skills, there's nothing about increased research and development, there's nothing about innovation, there's nothing about supporting exporters. This budget is built on a fallacy of hope that there'll be jobs in the future and no plan to actually get there. So when we get to Part 2, Mr Chair, what we see is that the big plan is based on cuts. Well, here's a message for the National Party. Cuts do not amount to a plan for the economy. It is a defensive attitude. It is not one that will actually help grow the economy. And what's more, why is it that time and time again with this government, when the belts have to be tightened, it's those at the low and middle income end who have to do the tightening? And in the end, what that is about, Mr Chair, and what Part 2 is about, is actually nothing's changed for the National Party. It's still about trickle-down economics. It's amazing. The idea's been around for 30 years. It hasn't worked. It's not working, and yet we have another budget presented to this House that is about a belief, a faith in trickle-down economics, rather than a government that will actually do something to help create jobs, actually do something to grow the economy. And so Part 2 tells us that working for families needs to be adjusted. It's not affordable at the moment. Well, I say to the National Party, those people on those low and middle incomes who are being affected, the couple that I was talking to last night, where the husband is a security guard who works full-time and the wife is an early childhood education teacher who works part-time, who are trying to raise their children, they are losing out of this working for families change. They're also Kiwi savers. And they're losing out there as well. They're being hit twice. It is their incomes that are being hit, while the people on the top tax rate continue to enjoy the benefits of tax cuts which were unaffordable, which were part of the reason we have the deficit in front of us today. And make no mistake, this deficit in this budget is National's deficit. It's a deficit that they have created by their lack of an ability to help grow this economy, by their short-sighted policies that are not about the long-term future and innovation of the country, that are not about skills. And this budget is based on a fallacy. It's based on a hope and a faith that jobs will be created. It is not based on a plan. And in Part 2, this is the core of the government's policy, to cut working for families, to cut KiwiSaver, to look tough. Where's the gain that goes with the pain, Mr Chair? I don't see it. New Zealanders know we're in tight financial times. They all want to pull together and work. But New Zealanders also fundamentally believe in fairness. They believe in fairness, and they believe that it's important that we look after each other in times of need. And when people are trying to bring up children who will be the future of this country, they deserve support for that, Mr Chair. Instead, what Part 2 of this government this bill delivers is in fact cuts to those very people in working for families and for those in KiwiSaver. And KiwiSaver, Mr Chair, is one of the things that this side of the House we are the proudest of, because it put in place a regime that got New Zealanders saving. That is compromised by part 2 of this bill.
Mr. Chair.